So to set the parameters of the pathfinder, which includes parameters like avoid slopes, descents, convexity, and all of those kinds of things, we can go back to Houdini. And first of all, we're going to add a couple of new parameters. So we can set the spline half width here, which is currently being set in Vex, to be a float channel called half width, like so. And then this I'm going to set to 1.5 by default, and then we can drag it into our tool. And this is now a parameter called half width. I'm going to call this, I'm going to put this inside of a folder called Unreal Spline. That works. We're going to do the same thing for the name of the paint layer name. So this one is going to be CHS paint layer, like so. Promote this, and we're going to call it sand, and then we can pull this over as well. So we have two new parameters called paint layer and half width. And there's more we might want to set, but for now that will do. I'm going to save the tool once more. Back to Unreal, we're going to re-import it. I'm going to save the tool. And now we're going to go back to our property set, and we're going to set up all of our parameters that we want the user to be able to control in here. So there are better ways to do this with structs, but for the time being, let's just set this up as a list of parameters. So we're going to go first of all for the paint layer name, like so. We're going to also then create a float parameter called half width. And let's deal with these ones first of all. Make sure that we set them to be public. We go back to the tool, and we need to set the inputs parameters on the wrapper that we are creating. So if you remember where we set the string parameter value for the file name here, we're going to set these things here too. So now we can extend this along a little bit further, create a couple more spots where we're going to set some parameters. I'm going to set a new string parameter value, and we're going to set a new float parameter value, like so. And then we're just going to go and double check the names once more. So they are paint layer with an underscore, all lowercase, and half width, lowercase with an underscore. Half width, paint layer. Then we're going to get our property set. We're going to get half width. We're going to get our property set, and we're going to get the paint layer. There we go. Okay, so now we're starting to set these and feed them through into the tool. And then the last thing is I forgot to actually set sensible defaults. So we'll set the default for the half width to be 1.5. We'll set the paint layer name by default to be sand. File and save. Save. And let's give this a try once more. So we run the tool. We've got our paint layer name to be sand, but let's go and check what layers we have available once more. Paint, we have debris, rocks, cliffs, sand, and riverbed. So let's try riverbed. Potentially that will give us something interesting. So let's run the tool. Set it to be riverbed, and we'll make sure that the BGO file is hooked up once more. And we're going to try recook. If you do find yourself in a situation where you have two of these pathfinders, it's relatively safe now to go ahead and delete both of them. Since, as you remember, all of our construction info is saved directly in the scene in Unreal. Okay, I'm going to go ahead and hit recook once more. And there we have it. So if we go in and have a look, it's still writing to the sand layer. So let's go in and see why. So let's jump back into the tool, and let's make sure that we set the target layer to be riverbed, and we need to hook up that pathfinding mesh file again. And sometimes you may notice that the Houdini actor reference is no longer connected as well. So if you don't want to end up with double HTAs, you need to reconnect that. You could probably fix that inside the script to sort of find the last actor that's in the scene if you wanted to, but for now I'm not going to bother. And then once those have all been set up, I'm going to hit recook and see what happens. And let's have a little look. So we've regenerated the terrain, but we can see that the paint layer is still set to be sand. So what's happening? Let's have a quick look at the output log and see what we find, if there's anything in here at all. And actually, I can see that there could not find a valid parameter tuple named paint or width. Now, that gives us a little clue. If we jump inside, I'm setting the parameter tuple paint and width. And I'm sorry, I skipped ahead a little bit because I did some debugging, and you can see I did actually change my name to paint and width. So if you've stuck with paint layer and half width, that's fine. The issue is actually to do with the fact, something I've talked about previously, that there is some kind of latency, like things with the Houdini engine happen asynchronously. So that means if we are not ready to set the parameters, Unreal has no way of knowing. It's going to say these parameters can't be set, they don't exist, and it's going to kind of just fail on us, right? And we can verify that actually that's what's happening, because if we go and have a look at the HDA in the scene, we can see that the parameters haven't been set. So essentially, for some reason or another, it wasn't ready to set these parameters and it's just failed on us. And I found that the best way to get around this is just as before, to introduce a few of these kind of delay until next ticks over the place. So in between these kinds of Houdini operations, like set HDA inputs. And it also kind of intuitively makes sense that passing 20 curves as an input to the tool is going to take longer than just setting a float or string parameter. So it may be a good idea to kind of offload that work to later in this sequence. So I'm going to go ahead and grab this set HDA inputs, going to make sure that the delay until tick is wired up, and I'm actually going to then shuffle all of these along this way, and we'll set the HDA inputs right at the end, like so. Yeah, okay, and then we're going to actually just grab one more delay until next tick and wire that in here too. So essentially we're saying instantiate the node, wait a frame, set the parameters, wait another frame, set the inputs, wait another frame, and then cook. So it shouldn't affect the user experience, but it might just provide enough time for the tool to kind of do what it needs to do. So go to the splines, okay, make sure everything's hooked up. It's set to paint layer name riverbed. I'm going to modify the heart width as well so we can see a more pronounced impact on the terrain. And let's go ahead and hit recook. And there we have it. We can see that this is working. Now, I've already set up another layer on my terrain called paths, which doesn't take the underlying tinting of the terrain. So you can have a go at setting that up yourself. And I'm going to go and set the half width to 2, and I'm going to go ahead and recook it once more. And there you go. The reason I did that was just to make the paths on the terrain a little bit more visible to the naked eye. And we can see that we are now getting those, and they're also cutting the grass, which I added. So if you want to add some grass, I encourage you to do the same. Okay, so saving up. And essentially, the pathfinding tool is done. And we just mentioned a couple of other parameters. So those last two parameters there are going to be set up in much the same way. We'll go to the property set, and we're going to have a quick look at the tool, see what we've got. So we've got slope, ascent, descent, convexity and concavity, and a user attribute cost. So let's go and add a set of floats, and actually let's do this with a struct this time. So we're going to add a structure, pathfinding Parms, and the going to have all of these float parameters. So it was slope, ascent, ascent, descent, and what else have we got? Convexity and concavity. Convexity, concavity, like so. we're going to set the defaults up to match what they are in Houdini. So 0, 1, 1, 0, 1, 0, 1, 1, 0, oh no, 0, 0, 0, 1, 1, 0, 0. And we user attribute cost, we're not doing anything with it right now. Let's add it anyway. User, yeah, or custom. There we go. Let's call it custom inside of Unreal. So we have a range of costs. We can now, that we define this structure, go to the property set. We can add the structure as a variable, pathfinding Parms. We go, and let's now call this pathfinding. We can have a load up the tool. We can see that we have our pathfinding parameters now down here. Okay, so if we go back to our tool, we now want to set the parameters just before we set the inputs as before. So we now grab a reference to our property set, and we're going to set some float parameters. And we need to double check the names of these. So we do have the full wording, all lowercase, with an underscore. Slope cost. I'm going to get the struct or get pathfinding Parms. There we go. Break pathfinding Parms. Like so. So then we have our slope cost. In fact, let's do it a slightly different way. We're going to use set parameter tuples. So we're going to grab a reference, set parameter tuples, like so. I'm going to make this, and we're going to go and set them all up. So there's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. We need to make a parameter tuple of a float, like so. I'm going to have to do this 1, 2. Actually, we can minimize that. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Okay. Can wire in all of these. And then the key is just going to be the name. So we have slope cost, ascent cost, descent cost, and what have we got? Convexity cost, concavity cost, and last but not least, user attribute cost. Okay. So we wire them in one by one. And this is just another way to set a load of parameters, except this time we're doing it all at once. Still doing it on the property set. Okay. And now let's give it a shot. So I'm going to run our tool. We've lost our inputs, so we're going to make sure that we have the pathfinding mesh. We're going to make sure we have the terrain. We're going to make sure that we're writing to the terrain layer paths. And then for the pathfinding, what we're going to do this time is we're going to favor the concave regions quite significantly, the value of 5. And maybe we're going to show it like this, and we're going to go ahead and hit recook. And there we have, as you can see, a beautiful and quite markedly different result, where the paths now seem to follow the kind of ridge lines rather than going towards the kind of concave areas. So I'm really a big fan of that appearance. And we've got the climbing up the mountain effect with the ascent and descent. I think that maybe the width is a bit too small, so let's go ahead and put it on 2.5. And let's just actually try the opposite as well to verify it is in fact working. Recook. So now we can see that we're getting the inverse effect where the paths seem to crawl along the valleys and canyon bottoms, and it's looking pretty good. So this is the kind of end of the pathfinding with roads portion. There's obviously more we could do. So right now we're storing the pathfinding values on the tool itself, so they're homogeneous for every single path. It would be possible to set it up so that the splines actually had the parameters that were getting referenced into the tool, so that each path had its unique settings. That would be a nice way to take the tooling. It would also be possible to set it up so that we could generate the control curves inside of Houdini and then send them over to Unreal to populate a list of splines like so. But I think that's going to have to be put on the shelf for now. And yeah, that's kind of brings us to the end of the pathfinding tutorial series. Yeah, I hope that you found it interesting. Hope that you learned a lot. And good luck. Have fun.